Last time on Local Perspectives.
Uh, when I was little, my family always would call me Little Nana, and I guess I I was a lot like her. And the wonderful thing about her is that she is very about caring for people, and she'll do anything for anyone, which is really really lovely. But I I actually, in the last several years, had the opportunity to live with her for a bit of time, and it was uncanny how many things about us were very alike. So, uh, I think from the beginning to the end of my time in school, I didn't really know what was ahead of me or where any of it was leading, but in the end, it all worked out.
Yeah, and that actually makes me just really happy. I'm a sucker for full circle moments and like reflection, um, because we have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
I met you in school. We
Mm-hmm.
took speech communication with Coach Lynch back in '05, so long ago.
Man.
Um, and it just makes me really happy to see like the trajectory and to be able to still know you today and to see how settled you've become. And um, I love when you said in the blog post, I wound up right where I belong, even if it took a long, winding road of school and career to find out I belong here. um,
Yep.
and that's what I would love for kids who are like right now. My heart goes out to the class of 2020 so much.
Oh,
My heart
yeah.
hurts for them a little bit, um, but it's just kind of like the adage, like, hey, it gets better. You know, there's always going to be rough patches, but just stick it out for the long haul, and you'll eventually kind of find your rhythm or your pace. It just doesn't happen quickly, generally speaking.
Yeah, and I think that something that, especially now, students and seniors who are maybe graduating this year should know is that unconventional is okay. My my entire educational experience was so unconventional. I mean, even going back to when we were in school together, like I was 16 and I was in college. And it was because my private school where I had been going sort of didn't have enough capacity to continue. And so I essentially missed out on 2 years of high school, which at the time I was not happy about.
Mm-hmm.
And, pursued this dual enrollment option and then graduated college at 19 and had a career and then went back to school. So like nothing. So it was like I was too young to be in college the first time, and then I was too old to be in college the second time. So like everything about it, and then the whole high school thing just like totally was weird. So anyway, all that to say, like things get weird, but it's okay because you will get to where you're going. And everything happens for a reason, and I don't regret any of the things that happened to me or that I went through, because I can just look back and see all of the experiences that I've had and the people that I've met, and know that it all happened for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And it made you who you are, and it brings a unique experience that you can share and impart to people who are a
Yeah.
little bit uncertain.
Yeah.
You have the advantage of being like the future version of your younger counterparts and being like, hey, I'm here from the future to tell you it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
um, I didn't know that you were 16 in college. That's impressive. Wow.
Yeah. It's like I didn't tell a lot of people because,
Hmm.
I was also 16 and like I'm trying to fit in here. So
Yeah,
we're going to make this work. But yeah.
I can relate slightly. I was always like, as of first grade, I was always the youngest person in my like class, like in the grade level. And because you're kind of obsessed with having like a label attached to you, that was like my identifying thing. I was like, I would always quiz people on how old are you? How old are you? I'm like, okay, I'm still young. Like, but I was 17 when I graduated high school, and I didn't turn 18 until the following spring or whatever. Um, but I think I actually looked older than my age back then, which is funny. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. It's nice to be a younger person and have like a younger mentality where you look up to the people around you. And did you ever have friends that were significantly older than you growing up?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, same here. It's such a safe haven. Like they have your back and your best interests at heart, and like the same kind of thing perpetuates that we're talking about now that we are legitimately full-fledged adults, which is so funny because if if some of the students that I've worked with over the years knew like the insecurities I have and the challenges I have, I do not have it all together. You know, it's like, hey, thank you for thinking that, but no, like, like you never stop feeling like that 19-year-old person at heart. But
Yeah.
from where a teenager sits, somebody in their late 20s, early 30s seems like, oh my goodness, wow, you know, you are
Mm-hmm.
the real deal. It's like, no, I'm not.
Grow up.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
it's a trap. um, that is really good advice and perspective for graduating. Those graduating from high school, because yeah, this time last year that was something we were talking about, and now the class of 2020 is kind of in the spotlight, and we're also
Yeah.
concerned about them. We want to just nurture them and help them to have the most normal-ish, you know, transition
Yes.
feeling in high school into the rest of life experience. But yeah, I think it's really a relief if someone in that situation can understand and grasp that despite what is being kind of screamed at you all the time, you do not have to have it all figured out at
Yeah.
17, 18 years old at all. It's okay to have pivots and turns and forks in the road along the way. It's just, it would be really boring to have to stick with one thing and never change, you know?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I I never thought I'd be doing the things that I'm doing now professionally. When I was younger, I thought I would have been a doctor because all my relatives are like nurses and doctors. Um, but
It's more interesting to mix it up a little bit.
yeah, and you have to kind of adapt with how the uncertainty of what's happening in the world changes. It fundamentally changes. Like the educational system right now is a great
Yeah.
example. I mean, I think institutions are scrambling to figure out what they're going to do and how to approach, you know, the next school year and everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
we're all in this together. But you also had some really nice advice for people looking ahead, um, as far as careers, and we have touched on a lot of it already. Taking your time, um, kind of being all in
Yeah.
whatever life throws at you, even if it's not the most glamorous thing or what you expected. Just be there 100%.
Oh yeah. Something I'll say about that is when I was in the transition from sort of from having been back in school and then to actually working in design. Um, I was working at the Hippo Cafe, and which is now the Hippo Coffee Bar, and I loved that job. Like it was just I'm standing behind the counter taking people's orders and making coffee, but I loved it. It was just it's one of the best things that I ever did. But I did sometimes have like this little, not guilt, but just sort of like this little bit of shame that would try to talk to me when like a parent of one of my students would come in and I'd be like, hey, I used to be your kid's teacher. Now I'm just like working this job. Uh, but I loved it, and I was just gonna be there and be okay with it until I figured things out on I finished school, what am I gonna do next front. And it was actually through that I really ended up getting sort of reconnected with Luke and Danielle, and then ending up with future friends. So I mean, even that you could say was like happened for a reason. But
Yeah,
you know, I think you get where you need to go no matter what you're doing. And so I could have treated it like, oh, this is just like some whatever job, but it was so fun. Like, why not just enjoy that while you
Yeah.
can? And so, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that, because I remember, I feel like you were one of the many like poster children of the Hippo brand, and like I
That
remember
was
you
like
saying
an
it is
honor.
the best place to work.
It is.
And I remember I'm usually better with months and years. It's uncanny, but it was like summer of something, some recent summer, like 4 or 5 years ago. Um, One of my best friends and I went down to the Hippo um, cafe at the time, and I walk in and I'm like, Katie Provenza, Teddy Regis. And
Yes,
I hadn't seen you
we're
in years.
united.
Yeah, I hadn't seen you in years and years. And so that's like my happy place. So it was really, I'm like, of course she's working here, like spreading joy. And, but I really have to say, yeah, like something that people should understand is that when you can really get in on the ground level with the community, the Hippo environment puts you around people that are really remarkable, that have such like business and artistic sensibilities. And I'm sure the conversations you had, um, I think of like Stephen, Justin, Ben, a lot of the people that work there, Cameron, your
Yes.
brother, like
Uh-huh.
really, really remarkable, kind people. And I'm sure you guys all probably spurred each other on. And even if you didn't realize it at the time, it was probably preparing you for your next um, chapter or the next page, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm obsessed with like I the other day I'm being stuck in the house. I have been tracking like the Pops and Pints thing where
Nice.
it's become a modern day ice cream truck,
Mm-hmm.
and I've driven all over St. Johns County chasing that truck. It just makes me so happy to
So
keep saying.
good.
I remember
You're
like
like a hippo
came,
groupie.
I know I really am. You came to my rescue too my first time. And I was
Yeah.
like, it, I'm in Las Colinas looking for the truck. Do you happen to know where it's supposed to be? Like, because Katie would just know that.
Right. Which,
I'm like, what does your hippo
oh,
sense tell
let
you?
me make a call.
Yeah. um, but the best thing subsequent to that was I was asleep on the couch, and I love napping on the couch, except that the leather does not breathe, and I'm always just
Mm.
drenched in my own sweat. It's gross. I woke up from a nap recently to a familiar sound, and I was like, oh, "It's happening! They're literally on my street!" And I like opened the garage and got on my bike and just like
That is awesome.
chased after them.
Isn't that what it's supposed to be like too?
Yeah,
Like, oh, I hear
exactly,
the ice cream truck.
exactly. So, aviator ice cream with Biscoff cookies
Yeah.
and all manner of pops have been like the running theme of my. I can't really say quarantine, because going back to gratitude, I still have a job. I'm an essential worker. I mean, I don't have the hours I used to have. I'm only the last couple of weeks I average like 2 to 3 hours a day, um,
Mm.
because there's just not enough hours to go around right now, and I'm a little bit low on the totem pole where I work, which is fine. I'm enjoying like the respite because I know it's going to ramp up eventually. But yeah, that's been one of my. I don't feel like I've been in quarantine. Like I can't really say that word.
Yeah,
I
I
think a
know. I
lot of
feel
us,
the same way.
yeah, a lot of us. I don't know if we can really honestly say we've been in quarantine the way people in Italy had to be
Yeah.
for a long
York,
time.
even.
I still go out daily. Like I go for walks.
Yeah.
I do as much outside as I can, um, but I take the precautions very seriously, and I think I even take certain precautions that are not even socially like uh, necessarily recommended or as like common, but that's everybody has to navigate this in
Yeah,
a way that
that's
they
for sure.
you know, tailor to their situation. Um, so another intriguing question, especially as we start to see um, a lot of educational institutions struggling to figure out if they're going to open in the fall, what they're going to do. It seems like online courses are making a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, a lot of them are free, which is really cool. You can get all
Yeah.
kinds of certifications and just learn about things for free right now. Do you
So
feel
awesome.
like, yeah, that is great. Because it kind of addresses the student debt crisis a little bit. But do you feel like we are approaching a time where formal training is not necessarily like the one and only path. Like we have so many self-taught professionals that have expertise in other areas, maybe went to school for something, and then all of a sudden they find themselves doing something totally different. Like I was an accountant for 10 years and now I do screen printing, or
Yeah.
I'm a freelance writer, but I was a math major. So what are your thoughts on, it's a little bit of a murky thing to navigate. Do you feel like we're almost beyond the time where formal training is like of the utmost importance?
I do think we already are in a time where it's certainly not required, especially in creative fields, because I think there are a lot of people with some like very innate creativity and a drive to pursue that, which allows them to really hone in on what it is that they're good at and perfect their skills and be successful. Um, and I mean, I really think that the landscape of education is changing. And even just seeing this generation, like what you were saying with people who are like, oh, I was an accountant and now I'm a screen printer. Like, I think our mindset as a generation is changing to uh, rather than getting a job just to pay the bills and then sticking with that job for 30 or 50 years until we retire. We are really learning to pursue the things that we love. Um, so, there are pros and cons to that, of course, as well. But, I don't think that formal education is necessary. Some people, though, I think I'm one of these people. I needed an education to sort of be an, an organizing factor for me and like a path to go down. I think I needed to be sort of led down that path of training and given the motivation and the prompting to sort of explore different things and different areas of creativity. And so, and I also really enjoyed the classroom environment as a way to test the waters and try different things before just being like, oh, this is my job and it actually matters. So, uh, I think uh, it worked for me, but I don't think it's for everyone. So,
I think that's a really balanced approach. Yeah, we probably shouldn't be made to feel less than because the classroom setting is not where we thrive. I definitely thrive in a structured environment too. Like even I was describing to someone how I've stuck with my like athletic training routine for so long because it feels like a classroom to me, and I love that. You
mm-hmm.
know, I love like the mentor mentee kind of dynamic, and um, most of us went through that from K through 12. So it's just kind of, if you
Yeah.
can keep reiterating that in other arenas, it's kind of a nice sense of familiarity. Um, but yeah, it's amazing. Some of my closest friends, um, they tried post secondary education and it just wasn't for them, but they are doing really well now. In one of them actually is an accountant, funny enough. The other owns his own electrical company.
Wow.
And I'm like really impressed with what they're both doing. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're all come in different shapes and sizes. So I would hate for like a young person right now to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a nobody if I don't like go to such and such and do this and that. In my case, I ended up majoring in English, and then my kind of niche ended up being sign language interpretation. And that's so it's linguistic for sure, but it's not something I anticipated for myself as a
Yeah.
realm of possibility. And then the funny thing is, I entered that field very like with a lot of trepidation and insecurity because it's something that puts you in the limelight. Depending on what you're doing, you're constantly on camera and you're constantly like the center of attention. Like depending on the age group, if you're in educational settings, kids cannot handle an adult in the room other than the teacher, like doing this all day. Like they're just like, huh, that's weird. So
Yeah.
yeah, so like that was a big challenge for me. But another challenge was like running into situations where I'd be doing like a medical assignment or something like that, and um, we would always like introduce each other, the client or like their friends and things, and they'd be like, "So, do you have like a training program? Did you go for like a couple of years in college for this?" No. I'm like, so you have no formal training? No. Like it's like, but yeah, my path was definitely unconventional in that regard because I had a really unique opportunity to spend 8 years very immersed in the deaf community. So
Wow.
yeah, it's almost like, and I might be completely off with this, but I feel like it's similar to like the Suzuki method, the way some people learn to play the violin, as opposed to the conventional like sit in a classroom and learn the classically
Yeah.
theory and stuff. I was just the language washed over me
Yeah.
every like most days of the week, and then when I was at home, I was studying because I was conducting free home Bible studies with deaf people, so I was a teacher in a language that
Whoa.
was not my mother tongue. So I
Wow.
had to like immerse myself in it. And I think I have like a linguistic brain, so it kind of clicked. But then eventually, when it came time for me to shift gears and enter interpreting, I made it a point to like elevate the profession status by like going to as many workshops as I could throughout the state and like taking exams and even like there's an exam you take that they send the tape off to a panel of deaf people, they grade you, and you have like a credential, um, because not every state requires you to do much.
Yeah.
So like yeah, I had to just kind of chart my own course and ask a lot of questions to those who came before me, and I still to this day have all the respect in the world for people who do that because I've only been in the field for like 5 years.
Wow. So was your learning of sign language, was that post college?
Yeah, it was literally it was like 3 years after. That's when I
Wow.
started. Yeah,
That's crazy.
it was only I waited 4 years, because I was just doing it as a volunteer, completely non-commercial, very fulfilling and enjoyable. And then it wasn't until like 4 years after being very immersed in the community that I was like, okay, I'm gonna just like tiptoe into this because
Yeah.
the situation I was in work-wise was starting to look a little grim, and I started tiptoeing out of one and into the other
Yeah.
very slowly because I'm like so methodical and like tortoise-like when I make these big changes. But now it's just like it's my whole life. It feels like, and I love
Wow. That's awesome.
it. Really cool.
I do think too that the immersive way of learning a language is better. Uh, just in like when I was taking Spanish classes, I took classes for years and I learned a lot in them, but I learned more in spending a summer in a Spanish speaking country than I did in all of my time in the classroom. So,
Yeah, they complement each other. They each have their place. And for me, it was like I had already been done with school. Like I was like, I'm never like personally, I was like, I don't have it in me to do any more school.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I will do online workshops at my own pace all day, and continuing education and stuff like that, where I could still live my life and juggle my other responsibilities. But it's only now that I'm really, in the last few years, really appreciating a lot of the technical terminology for things that a native speaker uses but doesn't realize they use. Kind of like when you take Spanish, you learn what an article is and like the past participle and the subjunctive tense.
Yeah.
Like, I never learned this about English.
Right. Like I learned more about English from learning Spanish than I ever knew before.
Exactly. So that's kind of how it was with me in sign language. Like I was immersed in the culture, which was a big plus too. Like I would be the only hearing person in a car full of deaf people for an entire morning, and that was just
Wow.
like baptism
So
by fire.
Yeah.
And so you understand certain cultural sensitivities and things, and the feedback from the deaf community is always really, really encouraging. I get these like elderly deaf people sometimes that I get to interact with, and they're like, "Are your parents deaf?" And I'm like, "You think my parents are deaf?" Like I take that as such a compliment, because I think they're asking because they think that I like grew up with deaf people.
Wow.
I did, but that's a story for another day. I just went off on a huge tangent. Um,
Good.
good tangents. So another thing that is so relevant right now in this moment is like our beautiful little community's ability to collaborate and just to have such a giving, generous spirit. What has that meant to you in the midst of the pandemic, the community over competition ethos that we find ourselves in, that we seem to talk about often?
I think it just affirms for me what a great community we live in. I feel like there have been so many interactions just in business and with clients and with different people where we're kind of like, oh, like we want to help you out and make this time work for you. And at the same time, they're coming to us saying, how can we help you out? Like, how can we make this work for you? And I feel like I'm seeing that all over. And it's really encouraging, And I think it says a lot about our community and about the people who live here and who are invested. They're invested not only by making it great with their great businesses and products and things that they do, but just in supporting each other as well, because we are all what's going to make each other work. So
That is a really good point. We are all what is going to make each other work. I love that. The community, who is there to serve and who's there to support you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that crystallized recently for Hoagie Night.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, I missed Hoagie Night.
That was such an experience. So it was like the joining of forces of so many people that I honestly didn't know who to thank. I think I was thinking like the wrong people, but it was fine. But it was like Ryan Tempero, the Bullet Street Food, Jenna Alexander, like all these great people came together to make this thing happen. And it was just such a cool little field trip, like walking uptown to the art studio, grabbing the food, and it was so good. I had a chicken parm, half for dinner, half for breakfast the next day, and
nice.
My mom had the like veggie one with the portobello mushrooms and everything, and she was raving about it too. She's like, it feels meaty even though it's not meat. But things like that, like collaborations, are so much fun. It makes it feel almost like your favorite musicians are about to put out a single together or something.
Yeah.
They really did a great job. And it was such a like secret thing. Like you have to like text in advance and know where to go. It felt like I was going to go into like a phone booth and like say the password and then be let downstairs or something. It was a lot of fun.
If you know, you know. I think that's the joke.
If you know, you know. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I know when it comes to your ideal St. Augustine outing, one of the things you enjoy is going to thrift shops.
Mm-hmm.
What's a recent great find that you've had? Just curious.
Ooh.
That had you really happy.
Wow, what is something recent? Well, this chair, for example.
Oh boy.
I'll just move away so you can see.
Nice.
Really trendy cane webbing chair.
Nice.
Which I actually, this is going to sound so pretentious. I like a while ago had made up my mind that I was like, oh my gosh, Italians and all of their like Italian style chairs with cane webbing on the back are the best. And it was like before cane webbing and all of that stuff was super popular and trendy and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I want those chairs. And one day Danielle and I pulled up to Goodwill and I saw them in the window and I was like, those are my chairs. I'm getting those chairs. And they were $2.
Wow.
Which was awesome. So I was like, oh, these are my dream chairs for $2. I'll take that. So that was a pretty great find.
That's pretty rad. So thank you, thrift shops, for making this interview possible with your Italian furnishings.
I'm sure these are not actually like Italian, just like some cheap knockoff, but it's okay.
It's okay.
I'll take it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. It's holding me up.
You can pretend that it hailed from Tuscany or something.
Yes.
this has been a lot of fun. I'm so glad that
Yeah.
obstacles, be them as they may, did not prevent us from being able to connect in a physically distant scenario. It was a little bit. I'm on Zoom a lot, but it was still a little bit of like a learning curve for me, like a different experience. I'm like, I'm actually recording this. Oh boy, here we go. Let everything. But Katie, I just want to acknowledge you for being such a positive and bright spirited person.
Aw.
It's been a pleasure to know you, like literally from like the time I moved here. I think you were one of the first people, you and Emily, that I kind of got acquainted with. And it's nice to just have that consistency where you run into people constantly. We had a pretty good run there where I like didn't cross paths at all. And then it was like Jenna Alexander Studio, Yield Design, Hip Hop.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of kept popping up. So that's always fun.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's always just such a delight to talk to you. And thank you for sharing stories of people around. I always just love seeing how our community is working and living and how you bring that out. So
Thank you.
thank you.
It's fun. Stay safe, you and your
Yeah,
family.
you
And
too.
hopefully sometime soon I can give you like a legit high five.
Yes.
Another enriching conversation in the books. Isn't Katie such a gem? Gen Z, I hope you took notes. It's okay not to have it all figured out. Grown-ups will often admit that they too are still making sense of this turbulent life. Stay safe, friends. I love you, and I'll catch you during episode 7. The best is yet to come.